Were
help him with the
you
shows.
were you at the Salt Lake Theater last year when he did Reboot Roadshow?
Yeah.
Oh, I was there. I was hanging out.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Crazy.
And that
I
is crazy.
I saw Ryan there for a minute and introduced myself because
I was
I
with
did.
Ryan. Yeah, I was hanging out with Ryan and Claire. Yeah.
Yeah, you're probably right there when I said hi to him. Oh, that is trippy.
I know, right?
Wow. We'll have to talk about that in the show.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Welcome back, everybody, to Your Creativity. It's Dylan, and I'm a loner again. Everybody's too busy to hang out with me, but Terry's in Atlanta. Steve is moving, and so I guess I'm the only one with a free afternoon today. But we're going to fill it with a lot of fun. Uh, Somebody that I became aware of their TED Talk and their connection to his their connection to Kevin Smith. It is Rodgers, a filmmaker. How are you?
I am good, man. But my pronouns are he him, so
Yeah,
those are the pronouns.
yeah.
So no worries.
I don't know. I was trying to. I know those were your pronouns, and we'll get into that a little bit
Sure.
because of what you do and who you are. But uh, let's talk about through the Kevin Smith. What was your introduction through Kevin Smith? Probably ties into your TED Talk as well.
Let's see. I'm super close with my uncle Jake. He was like, almost like my dad growing up before my stepdad came into the picture, and he really liked Kevin Smith movies. And so I don't even know what the first Kevin Smith movie I watched was, but because he had shown me Clerks, I think at like a young age, probably too young to really understand anything happening. Jay and Silent Bob Reboot was always quoted in our, or not Reboot, geez, Strike Back was always quoted in our house. Morris Day and the Time, all that stuff. But Chasing Amy was the movie that I really connected with. I saw it at age 12 that I remember seeing it for the first time. And it just totally revolutionized my life. I was a soft-hearted romantic kid, and so it really appealed to me on that level. I also watched things like Moulin Rouge on repeat, so it was no surprise that I think this movie really connected with me. But it also really helped me feel better about you know sexuality and gender things. That it was just comforting to see queer characters presented in a positive light, and it was just like this big source of comfort when there was very little else at that period in my life.
Yeah, at that time, that was kind of like the starting point of films exploring sexuality more, and so I thought that was good timing for him with that. With me, my first introduction to Kevin was I lived next door to some hippies in an apartment complex, and they were watching Clerks, so I watched it with them. And then when the DVD came out, all the extra features, and that really got me into film. And I collected DVDs and stuff for years and everything. And one of my biggest memories of Chasing Amy was me and my friend went and saw it at the Dollar Theater, and a lady brought their kid in there, and I can't remember exact point, but they got up and left at a certain point.
Maybe the fisting joke, that might have been a good time to leave. I don't know.
Yeah, it could be. Now, your TED Talk talks about your experiences with Chasing Amy and
Mm.
more into how those feelings of your sexuality and inclusivity. Tell us a little bit more about that without repeating the TED Talk.
Sure. So you want me to talk about giving the TED Talk?
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, the TED Talk was like a once in a lifetime, super rad experience that kind of blows my mind that I get to participate in it all. I basically saw the ad for the TED residency on Facebook one day, and I was I was doing an artist residency in Kansas City, and I was like, wow, TED has a residency. That's cool. And I blew past it and kept procrastinating on Facebook from writing effectively. And then I saw it again, and I was like, wow, maybe I should apply. The worst they can say is no. And so I gave a very vague pitch of what I would talk about. And lo and behold, months later, they called me back as a finalist. And I was like, wow, this is interesting. I guess, my pitch wasn't terrible. And they were like, it's a little vague, but we really like you. So what if you had to give a TED talk tomorrow, what would it be about? and effectively, I just told them about this documentary idea I had for a movie about chasing Amy and its relationship to the LGBTQ community, and told them what it did for me as a kid, which it literally saved my life when I was, a kid, struggling to come of age, and feel good about sexuality and things like that. And it was just this uniquely positive experience for seeing LGBTQ people on screen that I had never really had before. I was going through a tough time in school, and that movie made all the difference for me, in helping me come out and helping me, stay alive at a very pivotal part of my young year, my childhood, my teenage years. And it was just it was really cool to be able to get up there and work with people who were really great public speakers, and to learn how to tell my story really effectively, and how to connect with an audience and be able to articulate these things that I'd felt my whole life, but and knew, and kept inside my whole life, but I hadn't really been able to tell anybody about. So it was the privilege of a lifetime to get to give a TED talk, and then it was cool to connect with Kevin Smith as a result of it. I mean, it couldn't have gone better.
And from what I understand, once the TED Talk went live, Kevin was got in touch with you quite quickly.
Yeah, the TED Talk had been online for 1 hour, and
Yeah.
so many people had tweeted it at Kevin that he responded, and he was like, "Hey, I know some guys. If you are interested in having us in your documentary." And it was really funny because the next day I was like, I wanted to wait a hot second before reaching out to him. I was like, okay, I need to get my composure because this is a lot. And I was like, okay, I've got his attention. Now, what do I do with it? Because,
Yeah.
I didn't have two dimes to rub together, or didn't have much of a budget, didn't have much of anything. And I was like, okay, well, what do I do? And so I called his contact, and at the time he was repped by WME, and I just kind of called their office, and I was like, hi, Kevin Smith said he would be in my documentary. He tweeted about it. It's the last tweet on his profile. if you and so I left my name, and I guess his team had gotten word that I had called, and he like DM'd me on Twitter and was like, "Hey, here's my number. Text me." And I was like, "Okay." And I texted him, and then he called me, and we had a 20-minute phone conversation that was just super validating and sweet, where he was just like excited about the documentary and was asking me questions, and we were talking about doing his interview. And he was like, he came up with this interview idea to do a joint interview with Joey. And he's like, yeah, we'll do the joint interview, and then she'll leave, and then we'll stay and do the interview. And I was just like, okay, this dude is like really in. And
Yeah.
it was just really cool to get to talk to somebody that I had wanted to talk to movies about my whole life, basically, and to have it be a reality, and for him to be so generous and kind was the best experience. I couldn't have asked for anything more.
And when you recorded those interviews, did you go out to California? Because you're in Kansas, right?
I am in Kansas currently, but at the
Okay.
time I was living in Los Angeles. So I was there for a fellowship at Outfest, actually, where I got to meet some really incredible lifelong friends now. And I mean, I guess I can't say they're lifelong friends because it's only been a few years since I met them, but I feel like I'll be friends with them my whole life now. But I was out there for that, and it was just really convenient to be in the same city as Kevin for that, because I already had crew out there, I already had a team out there to work with for the doc, and so it was just nice to be able to drive 20 minutes and then interview Kevin.
Awesome. Yeah, I like look forward to seeing him every year when he comes out to Wise Guys in Sundance. This year, that's not happening. But before we started, we were talking about last year when he brought the road show here, not to Wise Guys, to the stateroom, and I guess at some point we were a few feet away, and I never made the connection. Because you work with Ryan on a film now, or you're a producer on the Clerks biopic thing.
Yes, yes. So through the whole chasing Amy journey, I got to know a bunch of people in Kevin Smith world, basically. And one of the people who reached out from that whole space was Ryan James, and we actually, like, he followed me on Instagram. I followed him back, and we both sent a message to each other at the same time, being like, "Oh my god, like it's so cool to like meet you, through the internet." And then actually the day before I moved out of Los Angeles, we met in person, hit it off immediately, hanging out at LA Comic Con. The next day I saw him, because that was the day that Kevin got his handprint ceremony at the Chinese Theater in Los Angeles. And so Ryan was there like as a guest of Marilyn Gigliotti, who was in Clerks, and I was there filming and working for Chasing Amy, and so it was cool to be like in the press line and stuff like that and be filming. It was really cool. I got to like bring out a couple guys with cameras, and it was just really rad. And so I got to connect with him a little more there, and then we both went to the Jay and Silent Bob reboot premiere that night, and I was like, cool, I've never been to a Hollywood premiere before. And then the next day I left Los Angeles, so we became friends like very quickly, like very close, very quickly. We hung out at Sundance last year together. And then at some point this year, they were talking to me about shooting Clerks. And I was just like, hey, do you guys need help? Like, like we're already making films. Like, I'm happy to like come on board and be of service and, help you guys cross the finish line. And so that's kind of how it all went. And so helping Ryan and Chris Downey finish shooting Clerks. But that's their baby. It's their movie. I'm just coming on to help. And but Ryan is like one of my closest friends now. It's a beautiful thing, Kevin Smith world.
It is, and the fans are just amazing and down to earth. And then over the years, I've been getting to know the people that are a little bit closer, and they're just awesome.
Right. Well, and so last year, Ryan, we convinced him to come out to Sundance at like the very last minute, and so he drove from LA with one of our friends from Legion M, and they were working all at Legion M stuff together. And we were all just like hanging out, and they were like, we're gonna go to this. You should, go too. And so, kind of at the last minute before going to Sundance, we all decided, okay, I'll go with them to the Jay and Silent Bob reboot roadshow thing. And I was like, oh, it'll just be nice to say hi to Kevin. And then it ended up me watching the movie for the 50th time. I don't know. Like, but I remember Ryan went to go say hi to somebody. And then you just made me put the dots together right before we started this podcast that it was you. So it really is a small world.
It is. Back up to the premiere and the handprints. Did you know Ben was going to be there?
I think I knew at the time, but like nothing prepared me for the moment that I saw him. And like anybody who's seen my TED Talk, or if you go watch it after this, I watched Chasing Amy for the first time because I loved Ben Affleck. I saw him in Daredevil, and I had like the biggest crush on Ben Affleck. And when I saw him for the first time, like my camera operator like panned around and got my face while I was trying to film him, and it was bright red. He looked really good. Like that he's a hunky movie star dude, and I had never seen him that close before, like been in the same area as him, let alone been like 20 feet away from him. So it was like I try to like play cool, but like I definitely had a little bit of a fanboy moment.
One of my Kevin, I couldn't talk. I became Silent Bob. It was at the opening of the comic book store in LA. May it rest in peace. But we got up there to the line. I couldn't talk. My wife had to say, "Can he get a picture with you?"
To Ben or Kevin?
To Kevin.
Oh, gotcha.
But Brian was there, and Brian was awesome. Have you met Brian?
I don't think I've met Brian. You're gonna kill me. Sometimes I get confused on who all the comic book men are, just because like I was always a Chasing Amy diehard, but I was never like I know everything about Kevin Smith diehard. But I think Michael Zapsik, and then some other guys at the Secret Stash when I was filming there, I got to meet, but I don't think they were any of the guys from the show.
Oh, this is O'Halloran, Brian O'Halloran.
Oh, Brian O'Halloran. Yeah, okay, I know Brian O'Halloran. Yeah, he's a super nice guy.
Sweet guy. He's asked us where'd you come in from, and we said Utah, and he's like, "Did you drive just to come here?" I'm like, "No, we had a whole trip planned. This just kind of fell on one day." It was pretty awesome.
He's a super sweet guy. I met the first time I met him was at that LA Comic-Con the same day that I met Ryan, and I mean he's charming as all get out.
Now, back to reboot. There's a mini Chasing Amy sequel in that. What are your feelings on that?
Oh, I loved it. So this was some of the privileges of getting to make this movie It's like almost, it's like an embarrassment of riches, right? So when Kevin and I had that first 20-minute phone call, when I was in Las Vegas with my now wife and my family, the day that the TED Talk came out, the day after is when we had that conversation, and he was like, "You should come over and watch the new movie because there's a Chasing Amy thing that's that's very current for your documentary." And I was like, "Are you?" And in my mind, I was like, "Are you freaking kidding me? Like this is this is ridiculous." I don't know if I could swear on this podcast, by the way,
Oh,
but
fuck
I'm
yeah,
sure I
yeah, go
have.
for
Okay, cool.
it.
So I was like, "What the fuck is going on?" Um, and so then it was like basically we were both out of the country, which is far fancier than I've ever been, by the way. Like he was like doing like a real tour, and I had a film that was going to play in France, and I had never been like to Europe or anything like that. So I was like, okay, maybe when we're both back in the United States, I can come over. And so the first day I met Kevin is the first time that I saw Reboot. This was after we were both back, and there'd been a little bit of time passing, and I was like, can we meet? And he was like, yeah, hell yeah, come over. And then he was like, and then I was like, oh, could I get it on camera? And he's like, yeah, do you want to meet me at the door or inside the house? And I was like, inside the house would be cool, thanks. And then and so then he's like, helping me, make my movie just by like playing along and being cooperative. And so then my camera operator Brad and I, he's the co-DP for the movie, he's the editor, he's like my right hand man for everything. So we
Right.
stay and we both watch Jay and Silent Bob Reboot, like unfinished without VFX, like I think maybe some temp stuff like all in there. But we see that Chasing Amy scene for the first time, and I'm like crying. Meanwhile, Kevin's toy guy is like on the couch, like behind us, and like watching the movie, like analytically, like, okay, what toys can we make from this? And Brad and I are just like sitting on the couch together, like we got to see the movie, and it was very emotional. Well, first of all, like I think it's really great how they did it.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
I think it's really great to see where Alyssa and Holden end up in terms of their friendship. And Kevin says this thing that I think is really nice about where these characters end up, where it's like, the end of Chasing Amy isn't just like a breakup for Alyssa and Holden. It's a new beginning for Alyssa and her partner, who she goes on to have, this child with. And it's also like the idea that they stayed friends after Chasing Amy, it means a lot because I care about these characters as if I knew them. And they're not my characters, they're Kevin's. But when you feverishly love a film that much and it keeps you alive in that way, you get this attachment to it, for better or for worse. And I have that attachment to the characters in Chasing Amy. And chasing Amy isn't this journalistic endeavor. It's a personal movie. It's a personal documentary exploring my personal journey with it. And so to see that and to have that be part of the journey to getting to see that movie, before the majority of people, and Kevin asking like, what do I think of it? Like that was a really special thing. And I think it was beautifully done. I think it shows how Kevin has grown and changed himself, and how fatherhood has changed him, from the 20 something guy that made Chasing Amy to the guy who's making stories about fatherhood, and how that changes you. So I thought it was a very tender, sweet moment. And I was like, oh my God, like Jay Muse is making me cry in this movie. What's going on?
Yeah, I used to not cry Kevin Smith movies, but Jersey
Right.
Girl and Reboot did it. We don't even talk about Pixar movies. And Schitt's Creek. The last few episodes of Schitt's Creek,
Love
uh,
Schitt's Creek.
I'm in love with Dan Levy. He's just
Me too.
well, part of that scene was that Alyssa's making a series on Netflix through her side of the story,
Mhm.
and as a filmmaker telling those type of LBGT stories, um, how did that part of what did you think about him putting that part in there?
I think Kevin is I think he is a genius in terms of marketing. And so I feel like some part of me is like, Kevin wants a Netflix show for Chasing Amy. So let's see if we can if we can make that happen. No, but like seriously, I thought it was I think it was really nice because it kind of addressed a lot of the critiques about
Yeah.
Chasing Amy that a lot of people have, where it's like, well, this would be more interesting from Melissa's point of view. To which I say, like, generally, yes, but this specific version of Chasing Amy that you see in the movie, Alyssa's evolved. She's grown. Like, it wouldn't be fun to have that movie be from her point of view in that exact same way. But to have Chasing Amy told from a queer point of view, I think is a fantastic idea. And I love the idea that if they were going to do it today, it would be different, and it would be from the point of view of an LGBTQ person, as opposed to the straight friends surrounded by LGBTQ people. Because I think that our points of view are really important, and that's something that is important to me, not only as a filmmaker but as the executive director of the Trans Film Center. It's super valuable to have our stories be told by us.
Yeah, I was about to lead into that. Um, how did that get started? How can people get involved and help out?
So the Transgender Film Center is a nonprofit that I founded, and we have a great team of people working on it. From our board of directors who really help fulfill the purpose of creating a world for trans-made films to connect with global audiences. And trans people in particular seem to not get a fair shot at telling our own stories most of the time. We get a lot of sensationalized versions of it on screen by people who don't really know what they're talking about, which often result in kind of dire consequences for trans people. In the documentary Disclosure, Jen Richards makes this beautiful and harrowing point, talking about how when trans women are seen as men in dresses, which they're not, but they're seen as men in dresses because men put on dresses and play them. That reinforces this idea culturally that trans women are men in dresses, which is not true. And that also leads to violence towards trans peoples, particularly trans women of color. If you're programmed to think, well, trans women are not women, they're men in dresses, well, not only does that trigger people's internalized homophobia but also transphobia, and then they lash out at trans people. And there's a lot of violence against the trans community. So even something as what other people may consider to be insignificant, as a trans person playing a trans person, that has power and that has consequences that are good for trans people. And so the Transgender Film Center, our organization, is really aimed at providing resources for trans filmmakers to go out and make their films and be successful with it, and to connect with audiences at the end of it. Because there are a lot of really brilliant trans people who have been overlooked, who haven't gotten their fair shot to shine, and we would like to shine a light on those voices, even if they've been making films for 1 year, or they've been doing it for 20 years. We have some really brilliant storytellers that deserve the spotlight. So our first initiative was called the Trailblazer Grants, which we will award in spring of 2021. And that's just a few $1,000s to go to some trans filmmakers to go make their movies or to finish their movies. And so I'm really excited to see, excuse me, what is next for our organization, and to see where our roadmap kind of leads us, because I really think that there's an opportunity here to fund and support really great work made by trans people, and to really provide more resources to our community.
It's awesome. Yeah, I love it.
Thank you.
Because everybody deserves to have their story be told.
Mhm.
This, Sundance starts tomorrow. We record this on the Wednesday, the day before Sundance, and you've
Mhm.
got a couple of panels that are part of the Sundance that tie in to Chasing Amy and the Transgender Film Center. Um, Tell about these panels, how people can see them, and are they live or were they pre-recorded?
They are both pre-recorded. We have two panels, or I have two panels at Sundance 2021 through Mama Film, which is which is a partner organization for Sundance's Beyond Film programming. And you can find it all on the Sundance website. Basically, the Trans Film Center has a panel called "Transforming Your Film" or "You're Transforming Your Crew," which is talking about hiring trans people above and below the line and what meaningful hiring practices look like. So we've got some really great panelists. I'm excited for y'all to meet them. And we're just going to be having a discussion about what it means to hire trans people and go beyond the typical diversity panel kind of situation. which I also find funny about Chasing Amy, that they were having diversity panels back then, and virtually nothing has changed in the 25 years since then. The second panel that I have at Sundance is through Mama Film again with the Beyond Film programming, and it's about Chasing Amy. And it's really all about how we've been able to keep going during a pandemic, and how having to pivot during this pandemic has actually really helped our movie and had kind of deepened a lot of the emotion in it, and really gave us more time to consider, okay, what do we actually want this film to be as we've been constructing it. So it's a really, I think it's an interesting conversation. I have it with Leela Met O'Connor, Carrie Radigan, and Celeste Erlander, who are all people who work on Chasing Amy. And hopefully you learn a little bit more about their contributions to it and the great work that they've been doing on this documentary.
Awesome. Have you been working on any other projects besides Chasing Amy during the pandemic?
Yeah, I've been trying. I got this art installation that'll be coming out later in the year, called for this art installation called Reflect Project at the Mid America Arts Alliance, and we made a film called No Reason for Celebration that really kind of walks people through visually how we're not much further away from how we started in the trans rights movement since Stonewall, and the things that still need to change. And so that's kind of like an angry protest short doc that we made for it, and I'm excited for people to see that and be part of this installation. It's definitely more outside my comfort zone as a filmmaker, because I feel like I've kind of done more traditional things before. So it's interesting to be part of an art gallery specifically. And then
Cool.
yeah, and then I've just been writing a ton of scripts. I wrote 2 features last year with my friend Taylor Gates, and there's a lot on the docket for 2021 to continue writing. But I'm hoping that I'll actually go out and make a narrative short this year, because I'm dying to make something narrative again. But fingers crossed that in 2022 you'll get to see some new works that I've been trying to get done.
And don't you have another fanboy type film that you're working on, the Margot Robbie?
Oh man, it's not a fanboy film. Okay,
Okay.
so it's called I Love You, Margot Robbie, and this is a script that I wrote with Taylor Gates, and we're doing revisions on it right now. I would love to be able to make this movie. We'll see. So the premise is that there's this teenage trans boy. His name is Felix, and Felix has an overactive imagination. He's very lonely, and he's come out as trans, and there's really nobody for him to relate to about it. And so in his loneliness, he imagines a best friend in the form of Margot Robbie. So, and I feel like I was like this as a kid, where I would, imagine, oh, what if Ben Affleck was my best friend? What if so-and-so was my best friend? And what would that look like? And so basically his imaginary friend, Margot Robbie, helps him deal with the struggles of being trans. And I picked Margot Robbie because effectively the premise of the inciting thing is that Margot Robbie is the spokeswoman for Vegemite in the United States, and they're trying to take Vegemite worldwide. So he kind of keeps seeing her everywhere he goes. And I think it's just it's a lovely, sweet film that is it's a comedy, and it's all about growing up trans, and how it's not that different than for anybody else kind of coming of age, but there's a specific set of things that Felix has to deal with, and he could really use his friend Margot Robbie to help him.
All right, I stand corrected. The title makes you think.
The title is
Yeah.
meant for people to want to read the script,
Right.
and maybe
Gotcha.
buy a movie ticket.
You're learning good marketing stuff from Kevin there. Yeah.
Thank you.
Who are some people that inspire you? Of course, Ben and Kevin. What other filmmakers and just people in general?
Man, that's a good question. I feel like I'm somebody who tries to soak up information like a sponge. So, I mean, I could sit here all day and list the people who really, inspire me or make my life better, or who I'd like to be more like in a variety of ways. For instance, like I'd love to be more like my wife in that Riley, she's amazing. She is way more type B than I am. I am very much, like, oh, we got to get this done and this done and this done. And she can just relax a little bit. And so I admire that about her. But in terms of like filmmakers, I assume your question's really about like what filmmakers do I admire and
Filmmakers,
want to be more
or in
like.
general, either way.
Let's see, filmmakers. Um, that's a tough question. I really admire like Ryan Murphy for what he's able to do with television. I think it's
Oh yeah,
brilliant. And he's able to support so many, marginalized voices in the process of doing that. I think he's somebody who's really shown that he wants to use his the power that he's gained in this industry to help other people. And I really love that. Uh, so tough. I mean, like I admire Shonda Rhimes for similar reasons. In terms of like filmmakers, I try not to put people so much like on a pedestal and take their movies like, movie by movie, where it's like,
yeah,
I love a bunch of Fincher movies. I do not aspire to be a filmmaker like, David Fincher, because I'd like to be the best version of what I can do. Right. So I don't know. I mean, I feel like I try to learn from everybody. I love that David Lynch just kind of gets to do what he wants. Like, I mean, that's aspirational for sure.
yeah,
But I really, love the people who really try to make space for others. So I really admire Fanchon Cox, who works with Ben Affleck. She's the head of development at Pearl Street Films, and she's the co-author of The Inclusion Writer. I really admired the hell out of her. I admire so many people who've just given me their time working on this documentary. I admire Joey, who is also a director and a good one. Like there's so much to learn from other people, and I'm kind of at a loss for who to say specifically, but I'm like a sponge. I try to soak up the good things of what everybody else does and try to learn from other people's mistakes.
yeah. And I think the world needs more people like that, instead of just their own egos and thinking they know everything, that they kind of just soak in from everybody. And
Absolutely.
that's part of my drive behind this podcast, is to share people's stories so they can relate to others.
Right.
um, when you're creating, what situations are most creative for you? Writing alone, you know any type of ingredients or stimulants, or because we know
uh
Kevin
yeah.
wakes and bakes and all that.
Oh, I can't do that. I can't do that. The first time I ever worked high was when he smoked up the Amy crew on set. Which was it was cool. But luckily Kevin does most of the talking, so I could just sit there kind of chill. And I was like, huh, okay,
Yeah.
okay. I had my questions, but I was like, all right, Kevin, you just keep talking. Keep talking until you run out of gas. Which he's very good at.
Yeah.
Let's see. My process whenever I have pages due is I usually wake up between like 6 and 7 a.m. and I usually just write them all right before we have to do it, like right before I have to turn them in. And it's not like a laziness thing. I love a time crunch. It's like it goes back to when I played sports as a kid. Like I always loved when the clock was winding down and like I had the ball at the 3-point line and it was like, all right, it's up to me to score. And I'd say a lot of the time I was successful at that. For the level I played at as a kid, I guess I wasn't like a prodigy or anything, but there was a time where I could hoop a little bit, and I loved that sensation of like, all right, time's winding down. What are you going to do? And I think it really forces you to make decisions. So basically, every Saturday, my co-writer Taylor and we meet around 3 p.m. my time, and I wake up at 6 or 7 a.m., write all the pages that are due that day. Sometimes it's 10, sometimes it's 30 pages that end up being due, and I just write them all. And aside from grammar mistakes, they usually work pretty well structurally for that draft. So works better than you would think. But I really thrive in an environment where I get to create with other people. Creating in a vacuum is, fine, but getting to work with other people is where the most joy is in the whole process for me. That's why I like being on set and working with actors. That's why I like pre-production. Post-production is where you have to face all your mistakes, and then people who are more technically proficient than you tend to do their thing.
And try to fix them and tweak them.
Yep.
In your bio, and you're a lot more than a filmmaker writer, but you're also a podcaster. I didn't know that
Yes.
till I read that. Tell us about your podcasting journey.
Yes. So a long time ago, I used to do a podcast with like friends I had in college, and then I kind of went away. But since the pandemic happened, I was like, you know what? I really miss getting to talk to people and interviewing people, because that's what I did for Chasing Amy. Was I just got to talk to people and interview people for extended periods of time, and I thought it was really interesting. And so I've got this podcast that's hopefully going to come out in the next few weeks, but with everything going on with the docket, that takes a back seat. But it's called
Right.
Professional Amateur Hour. My production company is called Professional Amateur Productions. I perpetually feel like a professional amateur, and so Professional Amateur Hour really gets into building an interesting me basically like trying to pick people's brains about like what is the most interesting thing that's happened to you in your career, what mistakes can I learn from, things like that. Not too dissimilar from a lot of interview podcasts, this included, but basically I get to curate the guest list and get to interview people and satisfy my own curiosity, and so far we've had great people, Kevin included.
Oh, awesome. He's my dream guest on this one,
You should
but
ask him, just ask him.
I've asked through Jordan, and it
Uh-huh.
hasn't gone anywhere. So
I'm sorry, man.
I'll figure it out.
You will, you
We'll get
will.
it figured out. I even started a feed called Kevin Smith and Friends, so all the Kevin Smith related ones go in there.
Gotcha.
So no, I have a little ammunition there.
Awesome.
Um, um, uh, and you talked about festivals that like the Outfest, and
Mhm.
you've been involved with our other festival here, Slam Dance, and some others. Tell us about those experiences and as a screener and other positions.
Well, I love film festivals. Before the pandemic, they were how I spent 80% of my year is going to festivals. I loved getting the opportunity to meet new people. I love getting to make new friends, and I love seeing movies. So the combination of those things just makes festivals a really great fit for me. The first big festival to ever take a chance on one of my movies was actually Slam Dance. I was 21, and I had made a film specifically for the Slam Dance digital Bolex Fearless Filmmaking Showcase. And it thematically didn't fit in with the rest of Slam Dance's programming, but I made it on this specific camera. So, they invited me out to Slam Dance, gave me a pass, and it was the first opportunity I'd ever, experienced Park City. But it was, that's a life changing experience. And so I learned a lot more about the festival world that year when I would go to places like the Austin Revolution Film Festival and get to meet a lot of really interesting festival directors. I get to really understand how the festival business works, right? And so then, Slam Dance was like, hey, we're looking for screeners or, programmers. They call them programmers, but, a lot of it is like what you would do for a screening gig somewhere else. But they're all called programmers at Slam Dance. And, you just watch movies and give your opinions. And if you watch X amount of movies, you get to be in the final room where they make decisions. And it's a very democratic process. And I learned a lot about making movies, just watching movies that came into Slam Dance, where it's like, okay, I would pick this film, but I wouldn't pick this film. Why? And how can I take this and improve my own creative practice with it? Again, that big learning experience of it all. Um, and I did the same thing for Outfest when I went there for their Outset Fellowship. I became an associate or an assistant programmer there, and just again watched movies, made decisions, let them know my opinions on things, and I don't know how many of my opinions they took, but still did the job. And yeah, so I mean, it's been a good experience getting to work at film festivals in that capacity, but it also taught me like I don't think I like programming very much. I don't like being the one to choose people's films. And I think that that's a really important thing to learn early is like what do you like and what do you not like in the festival world or in your career, and like how can you pivot to take that into something else. What I found that I did enjoy was getting to be part of the festival experience. So, and that's something where like my work at the Trans Film Center comes in. I can go speak at a panel. I can go network at a festival. I can go, to all these places and participate, but I don't have to be the one choosing the films. And it's kind of good that I got that lesson early, I think.
Every experience leads into the next one.
Right.
Kind of my whole career now has been because of that. Mostly fanboying, which is interesting. um, um, I'm trying to think. I think I covered all the questions I had. Is there anything you wanted to cover before we went into the bonus questions?
No, I think I'm good, man. You know, if people want to support the Transgender Film Center, that'd be rad. Transgenderfilmcenter.org/donate. And check that out. And then if you are interested in supporting my own work, check out patreon.com/SavRodgers. You know, I've got that. And put $1 in the tip jar if you're into it. Otherwise, I appreciate y'all listening and letting me, you know, be in your ear for a few minutes.
It is our pleasure. You have an interesting story, and we loved having you on. So the first bonus question is, what does creativity mean to you?
Creativity is any kind of self-expression, I think, or, you know, problem solving. I don't know. I mean, like, I think you can be creative in a lot of different ways, but that's all totally subjective and up to the individual. For me, it just means the opportunity to exercise some creative muscles. I don't know how to define it without using the word creative, I guess, but I love storytelling. I love a challenge. I love problem solving. And so all of those things are kind of wrapped up in creativity for my own definition.
Awesome. Yeah. Next, who is your favorite Muppet and why?
My favorite Muppet. I really like that Muppets TV show that they did on ABC. Everybody else hated it, but I love the idea that they were doing a late night talk show. I thought that was super funny. I think Miss Piggy, because she's got just like such a big personality, and she kind of cracks me up. And then, you know, Kermit's her foil, and, you know, it all works out somehow. But Miss Piggy just always makes me laugh. I don't know.
Nice. I like that. And then lastly, in the movie of your life, who would play you? I always think it's a weird question to ask a filmmaker and actors and stuff. This question.
Gosh, I hope somebody interesting, probably somebody who's not born yet, right? If I do end up having that kind of interesting life, I don't know. I don't think I look like anybody. So that's like a hard thing. I don't really think I look like anybody. It would have to be a trans person, though. You know,
Yeah.
trans people got to play trans people. So it's probably some brilliant young trans actor who's like, oh, I got to play this guy. Okay, fine. But you know, hopefully they go on to have a very successful career, and, you know, they win an Oscar for my performance, or for their performance as me, or at least an Indie Spirit Award. I don't know. But I don't think that person exists yet, which I think is kind of a cool answer.
Yeah, I like that. All right, awesome. Go through all your socials so people can find you and look into what you're doing. And
Absolutely. If you'd like to follow me, I'm on Twitter at Snackpack, SNACPACK, and I'm on Facebook and Instagram at Sav Rodgers Film. I also created a TikTok. I haven't made one yet, but if you'd like to follow me there, it's just at Sav Rodgers. And my website is savrodgers.com if you want to get in touch. Chasing Amy Doc on all platforms if you'd like to see Chasing Amy's updates. And if you'd like to follow the Trans Film Center, just at Trans Film Center on all platforms. Couldn't get my name, but I could get those names, all much easier for promoting on podcasts.
there you go. Snack Pack. Back to the Twitter handle, Snack Pack. Where did that?
I mean, I thought it was interesting at the time. And now my wife's threatening to divorce me if I change it from that. So maybe one day I could be successful enough, maybe, to where Twitter would just give me at Sav, S-A-V, like they did for like Ava, like just her name, or AOC. I would love to be in like part of like the 3 character Twitter handle group. That would be really cool.
There you go. Hear that, Twitter? Take care of our guy here. All right, awesome. And enjoy your Sundance experience, whatever comes from people seeing your stuff there.
Thank you.
And thanks again.
Thank you so much.